Hi, I'm Sahana.
I'm Meghana.
And this is our co-host and co-producer Shankari.
Today we are joined by Jyoshitaa, who translated Muttulingam Sir's story, The Elephant's Salary. She has been longlisted in the Mozhi translation competition, and we are wishing her the best of luck in future rounds. Today she will be joining us in order to talk us through her translatory process.
We hope this will be an inspiration to any young and upcoming translators, writers, readers, and literary superstars. So let's get to it. Mm-hmm. So to start off, do you want to introduce yourself? Anything you want to say?
Absolutely. Again, my name is Jyoshitaa. I'm in grade 9. I currently live in Canada, and I got into the translating field from Tamil to English by my dad, and so far it's been a great journey.
All right. Mm-hmm. So to start off, do you want to give us a small summary of the story?
Sure. So the story starts off as Lalit Jayawardena, a man who is in the position of a scooter engineer, and he finds all sorts of ways to get in trouble in the company, but he also finds a way to have other employees follow his lead, although he's only a lower rank employee. And this is the story from the perspective of the manager in the company. Mm-hmm. And it's the journey of Lalit's sorts of crazy ideas, and it's a very humorous story. It's a great story.
Okay. So, to get more into it, what made you pick this story out of the dozens that he's written? What really pulled you to it?
I think the main thing was the humor in the story. It's very subtle. You have to read in between the lines. Mm-hmm. But overall, once you finish the story, there's a plot twist at the end too. And you really get to piece all the pieces of the puzzle together at the end. And it's why didn't I think of that? It's so obvious, but then it's a really humorous story. I think that was the main part. The funniness,
yeah, for sure.
You get at the end, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I was reading your translation, you captured the humor really, really well.
Yeah.
I was laughing. I was
Thank
laughing
you.
when I was reading it. It was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
Did you face any challenges while translating the story? Both of us have translated stories before, so we understand to some extent, there's some roadblocks, especially when you're a Tamil English individual and you're trying to translate certain phrases that just don't come across perfectly or anything like that. So were there any specific struggles you faced while translating?
Again, I really had to capture a sense of the humor in the story, because that's the main part of this story, one of the main parts. And it really improves the overall quality of the story if I could capture that in a way that I could have the reader understand what I'm trying to implement into the translation. Because I want to capture the feel of the original translation, and it's hard when it's a different language. You have to use different style, different phrasing of the sentences. You can't directly translate it, otherwise it doesn't flow properly. So I have to really find that balance of preserving the original text and to implement the meaning of the translation too.
Yeah, I often find that in Tamil there's certain phrases that the sentence structure is different than how you would say it in English. So if you translate from directly from Tamil to English, then it just does not sound right. Some things in Tamil, there's also just a casualness to it that it's really hard to convey in English. So I was just gonna ask, did you have any trouble with the dialogue when you were writing it, or just how to capture if a conversation was casual, if it was formal, you know?
Definitely. I really tried to visualize myself in their position, trying to talk to my friends or my pretend boss, how an employee would speak to them. So I had to put myself in their shoes to understand how I would phrase the sentences. And it was definitely difficult to convey the dialogue differences, in the style of dialogue for different people. Yeah.
So as you were writing, as you were going through the story, how were you? If I know you said that you put yourself in the shoes. Did you use any other techniques to maybe help you on your journey of capturing the humor, the essence of the story?
Yeah, because
it's pretty tough. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it came across really well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. One technique I used was I listened to the audio. I listened to the audio of the story, and that really helped me understand how it would be heard, as if they were talking to me almost. So I tried to translate that in a way, because once it was in my ear, I could write it out as I was listening to it.
Yeah.
So I think that really helped. And then I went back and was oh, this sounds a little weird. I think I could change that. So I think listening to audio of it really helped too.
I think that's really unique. I might try that on my next story.
That is definitely that. I completely understand what you mean. Like sometimes I read it like way slower, but like the audio just goes like faster through my head. So like that is.
I would have to keep switching between reading the Thumber version and then the English, and I'm like, wait, did I miss that? So it's kind of helps.
Okay. So how did translating the story give you more insight into it, and did you gain anything more about the story by translating it?
Yeah, I think when I first read it in Tamil, I was like, oh, this is an interesting story, but I didn't understand the humor fully, right?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's nice. But when I translated into English, I was like, wow, this story is amazing because the ingenuity of like putting all the pieces together, like the little details really matter in the story. And I got to like be able to understand the details more after I translated it. And it really helps you appreciate like how hard it probably was to write the story itself. Because you have to make sure that in the beginning you have to put in a little information here so they can understand it at the end, and that's really hard to do. So I think it helped me.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I think it helped me understand like the finer details.
No, for sure. Like I think in this story, like it was just you need to capture like every single detail in order to like get the big picture at the end. So like I genuinely think that you did an amazing job like getting all the details down, because like when I was in my head I was like you said at the beginning, like I wasn't able to put it together in the beginning. At the beginning I just thought like, you know, this is I was just understanding everything from like very like surface level. I didn't know he was like tricking his boss or like doing anything like that.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the story I kind of was like, wait, like the details were there all along, I just did not see them.
I think a lot of times like translation gets like depicted as like it's pretty easy, you're just like changing one language into another language, but no, there's so many little nuances in there, and particularly in this story there were so many little things that if you missed it it wouldn't come together all perfectly at the end. So you did a really good job of picking up everything, so at the end I was like, oh my god, like all the little pieces came together. That was
adding on to a point, like people do think like translation is just like, oh, you know, put it into Google Translate and then just like have it output something, but it's like it's not that. Like if you put it, like computers and machines like physically cannot like translate something to have like such emotional value or to have the same exact feel of the piece. Like translation is not just like word for word. I think it's kind of just like you have to put your own interpretation sometimes to like get the full picture.
Yeah, the most important thing is just capturing that feeling, that like for the case of the Elephant Salary, it was the humor of the story that was perfectly conveyed, and like for other stories you need to capture just like the like emotion that surrounds the story.
Do you think that people have misconceptions?
I think I didn't realize like how much of the story I would need to change, like the sentence structure. I couldn't directly translate. I had to wait, that doesn't sound right. If I directly translate it, the meaning wouldn't be like brought across to the reader. So I had to like change it in like, so English is a complicated language as well. So you have to make sure to phrase it in a way that is understandable, but also like captures the meaning too. It's like both.
So I completely understand what you mean. Like just some things like the structure of some sentences. Like you're like, wait. I think like Muttulingam, he has like this special thing where he'll just say like one word in Tamil. Like he'll be like describing a setting and it'll be like one word, one word, one word, one word, and I'm like, okay. Like, how am I supposed to put this in English where it's like grammatically correct?
So like the writing style, the feeling, everything has to be conveyed.
Cause you don't want to like lose like the author's like stylistic choices when you're like translating.
But then
like the originality, right? The uniqueness of the story.
So like, but then while reading the story, you end up like really getting into like what is the feel of this story? What is the thing I need to convey? And that's what really helps you like helps with gaining insight, right? Like analyzing the story so in depth in order to translate it. Okay. You've offered a bunch of useful tips, like listening to the story while translating it and like putting yourself in the character's shoes, but do you have any recommendations for other young translators who want to get into this field?
For me, like the first translation from Tamil to English, like first read the story in Tamil, like completely try to read it word for word so you know like the basic, very, very basic storyline, and then do like a really quick translation. Like one sentence is gonna take like it's really quick. The whole story should take like about 30 minutes to translate, like really basic translation, and then go back like at least 5 times. Like I'm not exaggerating how many times I went back to the story, like tried to again and again. I was like, this doesn't sound right. You know, different parts of the story, they take so long, but at the end it's a really good finish, right? So another one, I would say like have multiple people look over it, like different insights. Because when you read your own story, like, yeah, this is good. When other people look into it, like read the story, they have different recommendations, suggestions for you. Like Meghna really helped me with that. Like a different mind to different eyes, different set of eyes. So like their suggestions could really help you, like make you thinking of, or look at it in a way that was like, oh, this is clearer now. Like I didn't think of that before. So that would really help, like getting other readers to look at your story and help you.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that point like so much. I feel like when you look at your own translation for too long, like certain
Yeah.
parts just like it sounds like so weird in your head, and
Yeah.
then like what I would do is I would get like people that were from a Tamil background. I would get them to read it to be like, okay, how close is this to the original? And then I would also like pull in like a couple of my friends that didn't speak Tamil just to read it to
Right.
be like, okay, like does this make sense in English?
Mm-hmm.
Like just to get like a balance of both perspectives.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that tip is like actually so useful. And I actually have not practiced your first tip of like just writing the basic skeleton of the story, because when I do it, I always like go like super in depth. But I feel like that's a really good like idea to do it. Just like you get like an idea of what's going on, you can fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's, like you said, it's really important to get people from different backgrounds, not just people who know Tamil, because like then that's a little too in depth, right?
Yeah.
Then they'll know, like they'll read the original story and they kind of fill in the blanks themselves. But we don't want to do that because
Exactly. Yeah.
the people who don't know Tamil can't do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I feel like, and plus like I feel like some of the point of like translation and like getting these stories out there, I feel like it's really important that people are able to understand it and fully get the meaning,
yeah,
because like the whole point of this is so like Indian American youth like us can like read the story, like even if they didn't grow up like hearing the language, they still have a way to like connect back to their culture and their roots.
Like I have a lot of Tamil friends who are like interested in the culture, but they're unable to fully immerse themselves in it because they just don't know the language, or they just don't celebrate a bunch of the festivals, and they don't really feel connected. So it's these translated stories that really like hit them because it's something that they can understand easily, and it really gives them more insight into the culture.
I feel like that is truly like the impact that translators are making in the world. Like you're helping people connect to a part of like their identity.
And then particularly Tamil English translators, a lot of other like languages has been translated into English like proficiently. Like there's so many like I don't know like East Asian short stories which are like prevalent in Western culture, but like Tamil stories and like just Indian stories in particular haven't really breached that yet. So when people like you and like people like me or Meghna, like we go into that and we try to breach that field, I think it really does do a huge impact.
I think like it's so important to get like young people to like get more into translation and like not just reading it, like doing it themselves, because like you said, it does provide a completely new perspective on like the stories that you read.
Yeah,
and it's also it's also making the stories more available for people, because these are amazing stories. Like they're amazing. I never would have read them if it wasn't for this, because I'm glad that my dad introduced me to this.
Yeah.
This is a whole new world that I've never like seen or heard of, right?
Yeah.
So it's great that more people are being introduced to this.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's it that we have for today. But thank you so much. Yeah.
Like it was so interesting hearing your feedback and your perspective as a translator, and like how you translated the story in particular. If you haven't yet, please read this translation. It's really good, and I like thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved it. It's amazing. So yeah, we are wishing you luck for the competition. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. All right.
That's all we have. Yeah.
Okay, bye.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yeah.